Welcome to Bald Move Pulp, the officially unofficial podcast for all the Loki stuff here at Bald Move. I'm Jim.
I'm A.Ron.
And today we're talking about Loki Season 2, Episode 4, Heart of the TVA. A.Ron, what did you think of this episode?
I thought this was incredible. I was a little skeptical that we're having mid-season kind of cliffhangers that seemed like bullshit last, but I'm like, I'm going to keep the faith. I'm not going to say too much about it. This is my favorite type of cliffhanger. We immediately got back to it. We resolved fully 90% of the questions we had from the cliffhanger. Got a little new wrinkle or two. And then, this really was a swing for the fences at the end. And I'm really excited because, if you recall last season, the penultimate episode was that fabulous, Golden Age Loki, Alligator Loki, Frog Loki, fighting Alioth at the end of time, setting up to the big confrontation with He Who Remains. And it was, and now we've got, because I've been wondering, I was like, I wonder if they're going to build to something kind of really strange and weird like that again. I couldn't really see because we're embroiled in this, but fuck it, just blow up the loom, blow up the timeline.
Yeah, take all the reins off. Let's see where this crazy train goes. Yeah,
this shit ends like Rogue One, and just total party wipe. And it's still, I think it's funny. It's well written, but now it's got some big stakes, not just in terms of universe. And I don't know why Loki seems so much better than any other Marvel thing. Maybe it's because it is free to be funny, where it's like WandaVision is essentially about a person that we like enslaving a whole town for selfish reasons and falling to the dark side. I got to watch Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I get to see Captain America beat someone to death with his fucking shield. It's just heavy stuff. Hawkeye, another standout I actually liked a lot, and it was a kind of a lighthearted Christmas tale through a lot of it. So I don't know why. I'm not sure why this team is operating at so much a higher level than it seems everyone else is on Disney Plus, with rare exceptions. But man, it is so good so far. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. They're really nailing this. I feel like this season in a lot of ways has been more interesting to me than season one.
Yeah.
Which is surprising because I really liked season one. I really like the Loom stuff, and I love the addition of Obi. I think Obi is really just kicking it into another gear. Some of the humor came back this episode, right? There are a couple of scenes.
I don't even know some of those lines should work as well as they do. He just sells it with his own personality and performance.
Yes,
there's a line in particular
on that guy.
I forget, but there's a line in particular where it's if 9 out of 10 actors said that, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, roll your eyes, boo. But he sold it.
This is the one where he's blaming, is it Sylvie? Yeah, he's blaming Sylvie for something someone killed He Who Remains and
really
released all those branches and ruined my life.
Yeah.
It's so cheerful.
It wasn't that, but that was a really funny. Honestly, him meeting... OB meeting He Who
Victor,
Remains was really funny and cute, and they don't go too long with it, and it's just...
And it's always surprising. I genuinely did not expect the turn at the end of this episode. I thought, okay, here's what's going to happen here, because here's what has to happen for this story to continue, is Victor has to walk out there, he has to launch the thing into the thing, and then everything has to kind of be contained for another couple episodes. Yep. When they had him just instantly disintegrate, I lost my mind.
Not even getting out of the door.
Right.
My jaw dropped. I'm like, that is a swing for the fences if I've ever seen it.
And he disintegrated with the device that they spent so long perfecting, and there's no way they can build another one in time. So I'm like, all right, all bets are off here, and then they just take it to the final degree there.
And they did such a great job of leading us down to, because even thematically it connects with his theme of embracing his role as a hero. I think back to Thor in Avengers Endgame and how he had that thing where he had the whole energy of a star got filtered through his body because he had to hold the shutter open so that Peter Dinklage could forge his Thunderbreaker or whatever the hell, his new axe, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, it's obviously Loki's going to have to go out there, and he's a god. He's going to barely be able to do it. He might have third-degree burns all over his body, but he's going to focus all that temporal energy through him and all that radiation. And then Victor goes, and I'm like, I guess that makes sense. They're trying to do something with, like, this guy's a fundamentally less selfish, more self-sacrificing. No, he just gets spaghetti, and just the way he got spaghettified.
Yeah.
Such a great visual effect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And who knows? Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? I'm assuming we'll have a time loop, and the next 2 episodes will be a high-speed run through the season we've already had, with like Loki and Sylvie trying to like do the perfect run, like speed run the perfect run.
Yeah, and you have to toss in a dose of He Who Remains in that, right? Like an infinite number of He Who Remains, because all these branches are happening and there's no loom to contain them, and now all bets are off. I think this is the war that's gonna start here. I don't think we're actually gonna get to like a massive war by the end of this season, but definitely we're gonna see the seeds of that.
And my only question now is this all part of the contingency? Is this all part of the reset button that He Who Remains flipped on himself?
Could be.
Because there's a whole bunch of, like, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like going into the penultimate episode, almost every open issue that's been raised has been answered definitively, with, like, minor exceptions about, like, well, is this person telling the truth? Is that person telling the truth? But yeah, like, it's all been dealt with, and apparently the world is fucking ended, and now how do they pick up the pieces and keep going on? And that's like every other episode I ask myself, like, beginning of the season, I'm like, how are they going to get Loki back on his timeline in a way that makes sense? And he has to, like, they did that beautifully. How are they going to explain He Who Remains and this whole Ouroboros nature of the stuff? It's like, it just, yeah.
I mean, it helps that it's all bullshit, right? It helps that it's all fantasy shit that they can make up anything they want. So,
but but honestly, you can get yourself in as much trouble as like kind of unrestrained, timey-wimey Marvel fantasy time travel as you can, and like strictly deterministic, probability-based. What was that? What's that like 45-minute long short film about time travel? Primer.
Oh,
it's like Primer is a work of art. Don't get me wrong. Mechanically, a sound. If you haven't seen Primer, please find it somewhere this weekend. It's like an hour long. It'll be your definitive time travel movie. I almost can certainly promise you.
Yeah.
And as finely crafted a Fabergé egg that thing is, like what they're doing on Loki, I think is just as impressive, because it's like there's no constraints except for the ones they put on themselves. And it's like a game of chicken with the audience about, is the audience going to call bullshit, or are we going to be able to drive
sure, yeah,
this careening car through this tiny, tiny tunnel? And it reminds me of Breaking Bad style storytelling, where like this creative team is like, we're going to jam ourselves so far into a pre-painted corner that we don't even think we can get out of it. Now, how do we get out of it? And it's just fun.
Yeah,
it's
except this
really
shit
fun.
Is roadmap 10 years down the line, right? They know exactly what they're doing here. There's no twist. It's just in the initial ideation phase, they came up with all this crazy cool shit.
Yeah. I do wonder if this is, because like the way, when you say that, my prejudice against the Disney Plus stuff not more than anything. Number one, I don't think they execute very well. But number two is, so far they haven't been able to make big swinging changes to the Marvel canon. Like you could argue that WandaVision turned Scarlet Witch evil, but no, she actually turned evil. She had a lot to think about, but she actually turned evil in Doctor Strange, the main canon. And I'm a little skeptical that Loki could do something to the multiverse definitively that isn't like able to be contextualized and summed up in one sentence. So it's like, but like, man.
Yeah, it's tough when you're playing with
fuck.
toys this big, right? Because like WandaVision is playing with a character. This is playing with the timeline. So like
multiverse, yeah.
Yeah. I think they could get themselves into trouble, but I don't think they are. And I think if you see any trouble on the horizon, they've thought about this trouble. That's the thing that feels right about this show, is it does feel like they've thought about this stuff quite a bit. Whether they're pulling, fantasy loopholes and bullshit out of their ass just to, make all of the problems go away is one thing, but it feels like it's consistent.
And they're pulling from the best. Like, there's naked references to Back to the Future.
Yes.
There's
Jurassic Park, maybe.
There's the Jurassic Park got a shout out. I think there's a situation lifted from the pages of Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban. A reference you now get, by the way, thanks to one of our intrepid
Do I? Where was that?
The Time Twister stuff, where, like Harry Potter goes back in time thinking his father's the one that saves him, and then he realized, oh shit, no, I have to be
with
the
Loki
one that does
pruning
that.
himself. Gotcha.
Loki pruning himself. That was a big mystery. Who the hell, who pruned him, and who was Ouroboros talking to? Like, the answers to those were like mundane but clever. But yeah, it all went like to another level the second Victor stepped out there and got himself pastified.
And I kind of like that switcheroo, because you thought like the phone call was going to be a huge momentous thing, right? And when you saw it the first time, and now he gets the phone call and it's just OB going like, "Where the hell are you?"
Yeah, it's just multiple
but then they
snakes eating
combine
their
that
tail.
with the huge event of the
Yes.
loom blowing up, and it's like, okay, I really love the contrast there.
Agreed.
So yeah, excellent episode. Why don't we get into it?
Let's do it.
At the end of time, where we left off last episode, Miss Minute shows Renslayer a recording of He Remains and herself congratulating themselves on winning the battle and establishing this sort of palace at the end of time. And then she sees herself leave, and then she sees He Who Remains enacting Protocol 42, which apparently is going to erase all of her memories. And then Miss Minute suggests that maybe they don't need... Miss Minute's in the actual like real timeline here says maybe we never needed He Who Remains.
Mm-hmm. Hope you guys can build a loom.
I don't know what
or
the
maybe
point is
don't
here.
need a loom, because that's the other thing is like this conclusively proved that the multiverse is just fine without a loom. The loom only needs to be there if you're trying to prune things or trying to push things into its own limit, right?
Well, and then He Who Remains would say, well, if you don't do that, then you end up with all of me, and the war starts, and it destroys the multiverse.
We know that's not a total lie because of Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, but we don't know the extent of the truth.
Yeah.
And my big question is... where did Ravonna actually come from? Because I call bullshit on the principal routine. Now we know her memory's been wiped and that she played such a vital role and going all the way back into He Who Remains winning over the other variants of himself. What are they trying to say? I'm kind of back. I know I dismissed it myself. I'm kind of back on my Ravonna's actually a variant of He Who Remains bullshit. Because I'm trying to think of the circumstance where he would trust somebody, and there's like a loose analogy to Sylvie and Loki, who they finally learned to, even though they had every reason to distrust each other, to trust and work together. And then at the last step of the voyage, she betrays him and kicks him through a door, and that's that, right? Like there's a neat kind of symmetry that they're now continuing. That I'm like, oh, actually, she could be some relatively powerful member of the Marvel canon, and right on the eve of their victory, as the TVA is being set up and fully staffed and everybody's trained and all that kind of stuff, he's just going to yoink everybody's memories. For what reason? It all goes back to his pathological inability to share credit and power?
That's totally the story they're telling. It could also be that's the only way to, in his eyes, to secure this operation, right? If only he is the one with the knowledge of it, then only he can determine its future, and he doesn't trust anybody with it. So
Protocol 42, I couldn't help but think, but Arthur Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is the canonical answer to the question of the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. It's 42. I also heard that that's the multiverse reality ID that Miles Morales comes from.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, like he was like, you found out in the
Miles
latest
Morales.
Well, that's a good, because so you found out in the latest one, and there's a whole multiverses of him, and I believe his spider was from Dimension 4. He's from a different one, but the spider that bit him was from 42.
Okay,
gotcha. So I wonder. I think it's a Hitchhiker's Guide reference. I don't know if they think all this stuff out that far ahead.
Yeah,
but maybe.
I mean, I was thinking of Order 66. That kind of stuff,
right?
Because it has a lot of connections to that as well.
Yeah. And the
I
extent of what she did to help, the fact that she was the commander of his forces that led to the victory. It's like she wasn't like an incidental, you played a role kind of business, right?
No, she played a very vital role, apparently. The image, I still love this image. It's so fucking metal of he who is remains on this throne as the palace is crumbled around him. It's, oh man, I love that image. It's incredible.
I really like seeing the messy timeline from before. Like that just is all beautiful. How they do that branching timeline style. My question to you is Miss Minutes telling the full truth here? That's the only question I kind of have left. Is she telling some pork pies?
Maybe.
And to what extent?
Maybe.
What significance is it that the vocal fragment that Loki heard in the first episode, where he played a snippet of this conversation, where he says, "What a wonder you are," and I'm so glad that the co-lead, whatever he said. As like I said, because I could see Miss Minutes lying through omission, like that maybe Ravonna planned on betraying him, and he'd found out about it and decided to end things definitively. Was it his naked need for power and soul power? Like what joy did he get chilling out at the end of time forever alone?
Right.
Even if that was,
even if she did have all the responsibility and he got to just kick back. I mean, kicking back forever is not very fulfilling either.
Yeah, very brilliant, driven person want. I don't think so.
Right.
So there clearly, I think, in several layers.
It might be a sacrifice. Like you look at the look on his face, and it feels very sad, right? He's not cackling as he enacts Protocol 42. He's very sad. So this might be not just a sadness about what he's doing to Ravonna, but a sadness about what he's doing to himself. This isolation of this very brilliant man, knowing that he's making a huge sacrifice for the universe to continue existing, right? The multiverse.
Yeah, that's a good. I never considered that. I need to put that in my mental calculus and see what because I guess he could also just be sad that, like, hey, I actually love and I'm attracted to Ravonna, but not as much as I am myself. And it's like, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I still got to do it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I like the other I like your other idea though too.
But I could definitely see. I mean, with all the jealousy stuff they've been doing with Miss Minutes, I could absolutely see her not divulging the full truth here. Still,
yeah.
But I don't know where they leave Miss Minutes at the end of this. She's been rebooted out of the system,
and she's definitely a woman scorned. Like, she has completely shifted from "I want to be your girl" to "fuck that dude."
And the system is gone. Everything is gone. Everything is gone.
Yeah.
As far as we know,
it's a wipe. It's a total party wipe at the end of this episode.
So what speculation can you even do at this point? Like, we're sitting here talking about things
that happened. That's what I love,
but
and I'm so glad we're not the type of podcast that goes 17 layers, because I've been following some of those videos, dudes, and podcasts, and it's like they were just wrong. All that shit didn't matter. Like, you got, it's like all your theories about this, that, and the other. Maybe. Like I said, I'm still on my Ravonna is a variant bullshit, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Speaking of variants, I'm going to call this guy Victor Timely. Victor the whole time.
All right.
Because he's not really he who remains, and he never will be, as far as I can tell. So Victor emerges from this time door that he went through last episode into the TVA. And he roams the halls unescorted until eventually B-15, Loki, Sylvie, and Mobius all catch up with him. And they tell him that he's the only one who can help them fix the loom.
I love that term about, I'm from Chicago, French, the shadyocracy capital of the world. I don't know what that means, but like,
I tried to look it up. Not a thing.
Shadyocracy, to me, it's like a little bit of a neologism. I don't think anyone in Chicago talked like that, but it's like a shady form of government. I thought it was a really fun term of art.
The way they spell it, though, is so specific, because I had the subtitles on. It's SCH. It's not like shady like you would think of SH.
Oh,
somebody who's
like the German Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
The perverse pleasure you take at others' downfall. I wonder which is the shot. Oh, I wonder if the downfall is the Sade part.
Could be.
Huh.
Yeah. I tried to look it up. Apparently, there's nothing. There was an AV Club article that literally just quotes this line, and that's it.
Says, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This is the only flaw in the episode, and I've not rarely seen shows do it better. I fucking hate it when people come in to some, person has no reason to trust them and says, just trust us, do this crazy thing we have no time to explain. Dude, between you both, taking two turns each saying you got no time to explain what you have no time to explain, you could have explained.
Right.
You could have taken this guy. Like, Victor, you helped us invent a cosmic loom, a temporal loom. You're the only one that knows anything about it. It's collapsing. It's going to destroy the entire multiverse. You're the only man. Like,
it's coded
he doesn't
to your
know
signature. We need you.
Yeah, he doesn't know it's that they're telling the truth, but that's like better than just being like, trust us, bro. And
yeah.
It's, oh my god, it's such bullshit every time I see it deployed.
Sure.
But anyway, one flaw of the episode, and
well, let's get to the other scene of trust, where I guess it's not here yet, but Dox is in holding with the others, who were trying to blow up the timelines there. B-15 goes to the judge to get her advice on what to do with them, and she advises her to try to convince Dox to get back on mission by helping them protect the new version of the TVA. What is the new version of the TVA? This was a question that was ringing through my ears, and it probably doesn't fucking matter at the end because it's all gone. But, like, the new TVA seemed like an Ouroboros in itself. It was an organization that only existed to preserve its own existence. Right?
I mean, I guess as soon as they stop pruning timelines, you probably
But
should
they weren't going to
decommission the
prune
loom.
timelines anymore. That was their thing. Like, I don't know what the temporal loom actually does, I guess. Like, if you're not pruning timelines, the temporal loom, creates order out of all the crazy number of timelines? But it would be an ever-expanding number of timelines, so they'd have to continue expanding the loom, which that would be their entire mission, because they're not pruning timelines anymore.
Maybe the loom does 90% of the pruning or error correction, and then for the ones where they have stubborn variants they can't remove, they send in the tactical squads, the time bombs.
Well, isn't the whole point of the latest version of the
instead
TVA that they refuse to prune because it's murdering billions of people?
Yeah, 100%. But
So now what is the function of the TVA? Because the TVA was always set up to be there to prune timelines so that shit didn't get out of control. So now what is it? It's just preserving its own existence.
I don't think anyone knows, but I think the doc is saying is like, well, if we're not pruning, then we have to, because that's what she's saying. Like, we could go back to pruning and all this would be solved. And B-15's like, well, we can't do that because of reasons. And she's like, I agree, you convinced me, but so it's like I think it's an open question of what the TVA becomes after this latest crisis is over. But assuming they get the loom unrestricted and it's just essentially pass throughing all of the universe, I would think that there would be a serious conversation about, should we dismantle this thing and just all go back home? Should we do this? Should we do that? I don't know. But the important thing was that B-15 needed to be the one to lead, because the judge who was the commander is now like, I'm a recent convert. I'm at your feet. You are the master. You are the sensei. You have to, and we could use the manpower if you get Dox on our side.
Yeah, totally.
The idle question I had, it was, how do you guys know Dox was on your side? How do you know that Dox is doing this out of kindness of her heart and not out of a desire to maintain her own power, to position her son in a prestigious firm? Like, yeah, you like to think that every general that you have is like, cares about the people, bottom line, and defense of the institution, all that stuff. But that's not always the case. And nothing about Dox's demeanor, costuming, post, He Who Remains actions have led me to believe that she's a good person. Although I guess she's principled. She'd rather die than have her people and her forces perverted into destroying the TVA. So there's that. Okay,
I guess if anybody out there listening to this understands the actual purpose of the temporal loom, let me know. Because all of these timelines would continue to exist without the temporal loom. What does the temporal loom do? Does it create the sacred timeline? out of all these other timelines.
So Loom takes...
That's the piece of information
threads.
I'm missing to understand the potential new purpose of the TVA after they stop pruning.
So a real loom takes disparate threads and weaves them
all
together
into
a cohesive
yeah.
whole. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that's the point, that like it's too time intensive and you probably are, it's too brutal to just destroy entire timelines. What if you could take all the ones that are like close enough to weave into the sacred timeline, weave them together, and then you're like the loom that's like cutting thread when you need to switch to a different color. Like that's an order of magnitude less than if you actually had an individual weaver just with two strands under, because you can do that. You can weave a basket.
So the temporal loom organizing things so the TVA can more efficiently sort through it to prune other branches?
Yeah. I think...
Okay.
I
can understand that.
Yeah, that is somehow blending multiple timelines into one sacred canonical one. And then the ones that they can't, the extra, the wisp, the imperfections and the stitching, and said they go through and they trim those ends to keep it clean.
But they're not going to trim the ends anymore. They refuse to trim
Apparently
the
not.
ends.
And that's the thing. It's like the only thing that confuses me is like, why aren't they just talking about shutting down the loom?
Exactly.
Just let the timeline go. But I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of because that's the other thing. It's like, we have still no idea what the loom actually does. Like you said, I'm surmising some things. But
could be like a nuclear reactor where you can't really like shut it down. Once that reaction starts, once you start up the time loom, that reaction is going to happen. Once
you've passed the time, like Matt, but like it seems like maybe you couldn't do it just this minute, but like long term, the TVA, if it has any purpose, post pruning ideology, it seems like we just need to wind this down, return the timeline to its wild, unpruned state. And we saw that, like in the beginning with He Who Remains, when he's sitting there with Ravonna at the end of time. Mm-hmm. That was not one sacred timeline that's circling the thing like a nice, orderly, glowing belt. That was a scarf that's been spaghettified and thrown all over time-space. It was a lot more woolly and wild.
Yeah,
more
we get kind of a close-up tour of it this episode. And
you're kind of seeing trying to see it trying to revert back to that, and it can't because of the loom.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to Loki's crew wrangling a very curious Victor Timely down to repairs and advancements, where he meets his hero, Obi. Obi is equally impressed by Victor due to a paradox where they both learned what they know about the loom from the other. Obi and Casey have come up with a plan for the loom. They've got this device. They want someone to manually launch the throughput multiplier at the loom to make it bigger. Unfortunately, there's a ton more temporal radiation out there, and Victor sees that, we can integrate my invention with your invention and get this to work.
We talked about how cute it was for OB to meet Victor. And this is the line that, like, any other person says this, it doesn't work. Where a man named Ouroboros looks at the camera and says, which came first? It's like a snake eating its own tail. Like, only his, like, wide-eyed, innocent, naive, golden retriever
moment-to-moment realization.
That he's got that makes that viable. And I needed 4 episodes to work my way up to even hit. Because if he said it in the first episode, I'd been like, get the fuck out of here. You can't have Mr. Ouroboros saying, like a snake, eating his own tail. But I swear to God, it worked coming out of his mouth.
Because this is not him cluing the audience into what's happening. This is him realizing it in real time. That's the thing that works. His own brain is comprehending, like a snake eating its own tail. It's so good.
I loved, like I said, I think overall that Jonathan Major's choices, and I don't know if it's his choices as is directed, but how he's portraying He Who Remains or Victor Timely has been bizarre, that I haven't fully got it. But I did love the absolute squeak he let out when he saw OB and realized who he was. It's such a it's just such a funny character grace point.
And I like them pointing out the paradox here and just letting it be. They're not even going to really investigate it, right?
Yeah. Because, like, why would you?
Yeah.
They've lived through it, you know? I love the Doc Brown, homage. Where he's
apologize for the slip shot, whatever.
Slapstick model. And instead of I didn't have a chance to paint, it's like it's not the scale, and the painting's very crude. And you see this, like, exquisite mock-up of the temporal agency in the reactor room, and... I wouldn't even done this if I knew Victor was here, and he has this like wireframe loom.
Yeah.
But they're, you're. I also, like I said, I thought they were really setting up Loki carrying the device because he is a god, and we've already seen his brother Thor stand up to the raging heart of a star. And how much more radiation can you get than that? But it's like funny that like it was a debate because like as soon as Owen, he goes, like I remember what it was like there last time, Mobius, and he's like, oh wow, Loki's really gonna have to hoof it out there. And like, I can't believe no one brought up the fact that him being a god has been brought up I think 4 times this season.
Yeah,
no one thought to do it, and it's like we're just people displaced at a time. You're a fucking Norse god and a frost giant. And you've got magic.
Doesn't Loki have
the ability out there?
Doesn't he have telekinesis? Couldn't he move the loom? Couldn't he move this device out to the loom himself through the window?
He can probably by the end of the episode, but
because the magic dampeners are
the magic suppression,
off.
I guess, turned him off.
Yeah, I guess he wouldn't suggest it now, but shouldn't they suggest like, hey, maybe we shut this down so this fucking god can move this without anybody going outside?
Yeah, like I think Loki can, or he could certainly ensorcel one of the goons from that they have in prison, or
sure,
or
sacrificial
Ravonna
goon.
Herself. Yeah. They're not above doing it. They did it this episode, but
sure.
But yeah, they've already gone through this. None of the answers work, and Victor says, "Aha! Have you tried this temporal prototype that I saved from my lab last episode?" And him and OB pledged to do it together.
Does Sylvie think that all of this is bullshit? Because several times my alarm bells were raised throughout this episode. Like, watching Victor get fascinated by a hot cocoa machine. I understand he's from the 1900s. Maybe he really loves cocoa. I don't know.
This is a man whose first of his many miraculous inventions he chose to show off to visitors from the future was his refrigerated chair.
Uh-huh.
So, like, yeah, he's about the temporal
pants.
Looms, but he also is about the Mad Magazine invention type shit, too. And
I understand
machine that makes... And not like it'll dispense into a cup, but it, like, dispenses the cup, heats up the water, adds the chocolate to... Like, it is kind of miraculous, you know?
Oh, yeah, I mean...
Wait till he sees a microwave.
Right. It just starts ringing alarm bells when he's so fascinated by these mundane things that... I start to wonder, is this part of a plan? Is this man more than he seems? Is this actually he who remains?
Well, according to Miss Minutes, no. Never
yeah,
will be.
and according to the end of this
that.
episode. Like, I suppose it could all be part of his plan, but we'll have to wait till next time to see.
Oh, you mentioned the technobabble and kind of it was threatening to lose you and his connection to Hot Cocoa Machine. I want to revisit something we talked about in the beginning of the season, which is Alan Sepinwall, a man that I respect as a pen in a television above all others, honestly. He did not like this season, and he specifically cited its reliance on technobabble and invented bullshit and lack of stakes. But I'm like, boy... He just must really be over to Marvel stuff. It doesn't want to cover it anymore or something, because like to cite Loki as the Disney Plus show that's like shit in the bed in terms of plotting and cohesion and all that's like, I mean, everybody's allowed to be wrong. A couple times a year anyway. So maybe he's just off. That happens to me on occasion. I feel like I've been off on other like reactions of things of late, but I just think that's just feels like a huge miss, man.
Yeah, I am with you. I think this show has been entertaining this season, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And I don't know how... Like, maybe he just really wants to get invested in the plot of something and hasn't found that the technobabble leans itself to that, but...
And maybe, I can't remember if he's seen everything or everything but the finale, but, like, it's possible he's seen the whole season and, I'm not predicting this. I don't believe this, but it is possible for this show to just completely shit the temporal bed.
Yeah. Totally.
In the last episode or two, and it's like I could see like if they don't back up these big swings, then there can be a lot of people. Like we had a little bit of this with season 2 of Foundation, where it's like, man, what a fucking triumphant season, but the finale kind of hit a little weird, and like I said, I don't think it changed my mind on the season, but like it was that big of a but the thing is like. I have zero expectations for what's to come because as far as I can tell, the slate is wiped. Maybe we can talk about that at the end of the episode of like if we have any theories about what's going on. But I don't even know how to theorize. Like, the fucking world ended, dude. Not just the world, all worlds ended.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it at the end because I think it's interesting. All right, Mobius suggests they get some pie, which sets Sylvie off. She doesn't think he really cares about the timelines because he's never bothered to even look at his own.
They keep bringing that up.
The jet skis, man. When are we going to see the jet skis? I almost thought we would this episode. And I've got some theorizing to do in the final scene of this.
I have a theory that I don't know there's a ton of evidence for, but it kind of is hitting me in the right type of funny bone. Do you remember the young manager at McDonald's, the blonde, blue-eyed kid that's kind of like shy? And there's a very popular theory that's Mobius, and for whatever reason, Sylvie's kind of keeping her eye on it for some reason on the sacred timeline, and that's why they're being both pointing to his mysterious and his lack of curiosity, and because they're going to now I don't know what that would reveal, but I do like it. It does seem to fit.
And in the 70s, on a McDonald's manager's salary, you could probably afford a jet ski. Not in the 90s.
He got plucked off. He got plucked off the timeline right as he had. You know, he had the big 5-gallon water jug full of change, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get that Ski-Doo, baby."
Yep. Okay, all right. That's an interesting theory to keep your eye on.
Oh, you know what? Maybe he, as an employee, which is probably illegal, he played the McDonald's Monopoly fast cash game, and that's got to be like, you know, what like Connecticut
the
Avenue
New Jersey
type
gangsters who were rigging that shit, and yeah,
that's an orange property. You collect the orange properties, you got a jet ski back in the day.
There you go.
They plucked him the day he won his jet skis, and that's why he's fixated with them. There's something to that. It all ties together, though. I think the McDonald's manager secretly being Mobius would, again, I don't know what it would mean or where they're going for it, but I do like that, like, maybe Sylvie knows a little bit more than she's cottoning on to, or maybe they're just like some kind of fate kind of thing. But it's the theory I like the most so far.
Sure. In a show where a 1900s inventor, 19th century inventor could have a book from the future and invent something that could help future people solve a problem. Yeah, him getting a jet ski from McDonald's is not a bridge too far for me. We go over to the holding cell, where Brad tries to start a prison break, but Dox is not on his side because he sold them out. And B-15 comes into the cell to ask for her help, and she gives her time to think about it and sends one of her goons to help keep an eye on Victor.
Well, in second watch, you really suck your teeth in this scene because, man, if One Me had tried a little bit harder, if Dox hadn't been such a hard ass, you know, a lot more people would be alive instead of meeting a truly horrible end, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, they don't show any of it, which, you know, it's Disney, it's Marvel.
It's
of
Disney,
course,
but
like, I wanted to see it.
Dude, it's horrific being invisibly squeezed into I was trying to put myself into that mental position and what it probably did look like and how disgusting and inhuman it was, and I'm like, oh god.
At least show me the cube at the end. That's all I wanted. I didn't need to see it happening, but show me the aftermath.
It was like sizzling and bubbling when B-15 came.
Show me the flesh cube. Yeah.
You want to see the cube of flesh, huh?
I do.
You want the flesh cube. You want to get real Cronenberg with it.
I do.
I thought it actually went pretty hard for the mouse. Like, just the implication was sickening. Yeah, if you actually showed it. Oh god.
Watching Brad's expression, you can imagine a lot.
You know, I kind of turned around on X5. He's a real piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's
his
agree. I guess if the stakes are dying, maybe I don't know, but like, god, that's your mother and all your coworkers getting crushed to death.
Is this show really just about working till you die versus retiring? Because there's a line in there that he says, we've earned our lives on the timeline, right? We've earned it. We've worked enough on the TVA. It's time for us to take our lives back.
When did he start fucking around as the Wolfman, or as the Monstroso or whatever the hell he was.
I mean, I don't know how time works. It
Yeah.
was like 2 episodes ago. It was like the same day in the TVA.
But it didn't feel like his work was done because his mom and the other
Agreed.
agents were working full tilt. Like if like he was playing hooky from their
he just
glorious
kinda left.
purpose. Or is it just a timey-wimey thing where it's like, yeah, I did my part of it, and now I took a time, Scott's, a couple years back, and I'm living out my life. I don't know.
Yeah, not exactly sure either. And then we have Loki and Sylvie talking about, how she's here again, trying to help. She argues against the TVA. He argues for a better TVA and for holding out hope. And it's a lot of hope for her tastes, but it seems like he's winning her over.
Yeah. And like I said, burn it down and start from scratch. What does that mean? When you say burn it down, are you talking about all of reality and just waiting for it to reemerge from the cosmic soup? Because that's what I feel. Like it's slightly still frustrating that Sylvie's still trying to argue the stakes at this point, where she's at the TVA, she sees how fucked up it is. If you want to let the loom explode, you're kind of rolling the dice. But whatever. But she's got a good point too. She's like, interfere for the good, greater good. I think I've heard this before. You gotta think before you start jamming your fingers into the gears,
Sure, absolutely. Messing with
But
a lot
also,
of
it's
people's
also
lives.
irresponsible to if you went to an animal research facility and you just freed all the monkeys and the dogs and the cows and the rabbits and the is that an act of kindness if you're just like, be free, but you don't have any plan to feed them, you don't have any plan to get them back to their native habitats, you don't did you just make yourself feel better? I think she's got a point about but he's got a point about you can't just give everyone their free will back and the multiverse back and just peace out. I don't have to do anything to stabilize it, give it guidance, give it support.
Yeah, her lines about
that seems...
I guess godhood, so no matter what we do here, we're playing God. It made me feel like that's the reason she went to work at McDonald's. She didn't want to play God.
Yeah.
She just wanted to kill He Who Remains, let things play out naturally. I'm going to go make the least possible impact because I don't want to play God. And then his line of, we are gods.
Well, we are gods, yeah.
is interesting. I don't
have
know
the
if that
power.
gives you the right to decide everything, even if you are a god, but it's certainly an interesting argument.
Yeah. I think I don't know. Sometimes when you have the means to act and it's to save lives, I feel because I if a doctor was walking down the street and he saw someone have a heart attack and people are calling for doctors, he's like, I just don't want to get involved. I don't think that person should go to jail, but I would have some harsh moral judgment that you have the skill and the ability to help somebody and you just choose not to for whatever reasons. Sometimes with great power comes great responsibility. But the line gets blurry between, Loki and Avengers 1, you guys will be more comfortable kneeling, you don't want free will. You you want to be told. It's a fine line between that and then I guess a doctor coming to your house and bullying you for being fat, I'm gonna beat you with this rubber hose until you lose weight. It's I don't know if I need that doc.
Especially if you're not even sure there's anything wrong, right? Somebody who's seems fairly untrustworthy is telling you there's something wrong that you need to fix, but you're not sure. And fixing it causes the deaths of billions of people. That's the other wrinkle, right? It's you're playing God one way or another. You're either killing a bunch of people to save the universe, or you're letting the universe potentially self-destruct.
Yeah.
So you don't have to kill billions of people. It's
kind of a roll of the dice, whether you're supporting the right side either way,
or whether any of it's true. Yeah. I don't know. I've always taken it on face value until I see evidence to the contrary that He Who Remains is telling the truth about the war and the destruction of the multiverse. So I do think there's a value in what Loki is doing, but Sylvie might have the right.
It could be a pawn. This is called just a more giant scheme to keep He Who Remains in power, because I feel like that's what they're telling us it is. That this is so. It's okay, yeah, you're a pawn of this guy. Because I'm with you. I don't think that he's told an outright lie. I just think there's some Obi-Wan Kenobi certain point of view bullshit happening here too.
Yeah, could be.
That, like, I'm telling you 90% of the truth, but it's not the whole truth. If you understood the whole truth, you might decide, okay, maybe the universe just needs to die.
Mm-hmm. Maybe what needs to be pruned is He Who Remains from every timeline.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of pruning the entire timeline, you can just go in with your time stick and just jab him.
But if you did that, would the TVA wink out of existence? Because you're continually preventing the TVA from coming, you'd have to, like...
I mean, Obi based all of his information on a book that didn't exist.
This is true.
That was written by a man from the 1900s, and like...
It's like if Loki had not jabbed the past Loki in this episode, would something have made sure he got jabbed, or would there just be two Lokis now?
Like I said, they lift that paradox up, they turn it to one angle, they look at it, and they put it back down. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with the.
Yeah. Brad, you're still trying to sow dissent among the prisoners when suddenly a time door opens in the cell. Renslayer and Miss Minutes come through with a pitch to save the TVA from B-15. No one except Brad is willing to join her, so they are all killed in one of these shrinking boxes. And then Brad leaves with Renslayer.
I love Miss Minutes standing there on behind Renslayer's shoulder in like parade rest, like she's the fascist major domo of this fledgling empire, and I don't know. I just Miss Minutes, man, cracks me up. But
I man, there's something here that's just like, oh, why are you doing this? You're watching the person you're pledging your allegiance to viciously, brutally murder people right in front of you. Yeah. And yet you're still willing to go along with them.
Yeah.
How?
Brad's not
she has no loyalty. Man. You are next on the chopping block if you ever step out of line. But I guess there's nothing that would cause you to step out of line. If the brutal murder of people right in front of your face doesn't do it, what would?
Yeah, Brad doesn't seem like a strong person in any like maybe in a physical sense.
Does he think he's getting his old life back from this woman? That's insane. She's going to use you up and then discard you in the way she discarded everyone in this room, man.
But maybe he doesn't see that because he doesn't know the complexities. He just sees her as like their strong leader who's seen, and like, hey, she's been gone for 2 days and the whole thing's falling apart. Like, maybe this is distasteful and I wouldn't do it, but like, I also don't want to be squashed in that box.
Sure. No, I get it.
And she doesn't know that part of the playbook is wipe everyone's memories when you're done conquering. So fuck you in your timeline. Go back to cracking skulls for me, X5.
Yeah. All right, Obi, Casey, and Victor finish the throughput multiplier integration, but the temp pads are not connecting to it, which is weird. Mobius stops by with some hot cocoa, and Victor becomes fascinated with the idea of a hot cocoa machine. So B-15's dude, this jabroni, takes him to see it. All of this was so weird, man. Alarm bells started going off. I'm like, why is he so fascinated with the cocoa machine? Is this part of a plan that he's got?
Hot chocolate machines, man, are getting to be like Oranges and Godfather. You see that shit and it's your ass. Like if you're a security guard in Terminator 2, you're about to get a spiked finger shoved through your brain and you're about to get your shit copied. And if you're in Loki, you're about to get de-atomized at the temporal level. It's bad news, man. You see a bag of oranges or a glass of hot cocoa spill, you better run. B-15, she sees the carnage in the holding cell here, tries to call someone, but her temp pad's also not working, won't connect to the network. And then, like you said, Victor there's your Jurassic Park reference.
That's here in a second when they're trying to diagnose what's wrong. Oh, I thought it was this one.
Gotcha.
Victor gets some hot cocoa from the machine, gives it to his guard, but then Brad sneaks up behind the guard, prunes him, and he asks Victor where the device is. Yeah, a lot of unexpected prunings in this episode, I gotta say. This, I don't know, was super unexpected. I kind of figured something was going to happen to him, but the real unexpected one to me was Ravonna later. That was wild. I did not expect her to get pruned, and it's all null and void by the end of this episode. Who cares?
I was going to say, I thought that was a pretty big swing, but they weren't even close to being done.
Right. And then, Obi's trying to diagnose what's going wrong with the TVA computer systems. And he figures out that Miss Minutes is taking control. They grab the multiplier and rush to get Victor, but he's gone. And Loki realizes, Renslayer must have Victor somewhere inside the TVA.
Yeah, I thought that was a smart connection. The fact that, like, oh my God, she could be anywhere. And he's like, she's not going anywhere. She's not trying to get away. She wants the TVA.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's
although if they're just going to have a meeting, if they're just going to chit-chat, maybe do it in a different timeline. Maybe don't do it in one of the most highly secure places in the multiverse.
It's
you have time doors, use them.
Not a bad idea, to be honest.
But apparently she doesn't think so.
Yeah, I just like Loki, who's like the consummate schemer, planner, backstabber, like immediately susses out her grand, all the forthright, upright people are, where's she going, what's she doing? And he's like, I know exactly what she would do because I know what I would do in this circumstance.
It's almost like the TVA has never faced any real adversary, any clever adversary, right? Because they seem so naive.
Makes sense. Although, I keep going back to, like, why did he go from I am the ruler? Because there was never, like, if the bas relief was him and Renslayer, that would make a lot of sense.
Him being...
But it was...
He Who Remains?
Yeah, He Who Remains.
Okay.
Like, that they were co-ruling, but, like, it was just a bunch of his faces, like 5 of his faces morphing into 3 of the Time Lords or whatever, that the robot deals.
Yeah.
Like, so that implies that there was... I don't think that's a post-Renslayer cataclysm. I think that's a post... Something happens, and then he has to invent this whole... Maybe as a failsafe, because he's all about these failsafes. Maybe it's a failsafe for if the one variant of He Who Remains actually did track him down. That, like, it's another layer of obfuscation before, like, it's like a trip the alarm when, oh my God, someone ripped off a robot head and the jig's up.
Yeah, it seems like the only person with any actual smarts. Maybe that's because their brains have been wiped too many times and they're fried. But He Remains is the guy who does all the actual scheming, can figure things out. Yeah. He's the brains behind the operation. Everybody else is just kind of a pawn.
Yeah. And I can say, is he that smart? He does look like he's that smart. He's like Rick Sanchez level smart. But also it helps if you can have control of all timelines and can prune the ones that are leading towards her. So it's like,
and see the future.
You're really smart, but you're also calling your shots on the cosmic billboard. So
right.
Or billiards board. Billiards table? Billiards table. Pool table.
Sure.
Got there in 5.
Let's go to the conference room where Victor is questioned about the device by Renslayer. Here's where I think they'd be safer having this conversation elsewhere and then popping back in once they figure it out, but they don't. She just wants to know where it is, what it is, all this stuff. And then the TVA begins tearing itself apart while Loki and Sylvie try to get to the loom room, but they get separated in the elevator because Miss Minutes is controlling the whole place. Mobius does get to the loom room with the multiplier. And then Loki finds himself in the future timeline where the phone rang and he saw Sylvie in the elevator and he was pruned. Turns out he snuck up and pruned himself. Why prune himself? He says, I promise, and I feel like he's talking to me as an audience member, I promise you this will make sense. When he says that to Sylvie.
Because the original Loki loses his time stick, right?
No, like logistically, yeah. Time-wise, it all works out and makes sense. It's just like, why is the question? Why does he feel he needs to prune himself in that moment? Oh, it's so he can get pulled back into
untethered
the single
from time,
timeline.
and yeah. That was so he had to. Like I said, this was
that makes sense.
This was Harry Potter doing his own Expecto Patronus at the end because he's waiting for something. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then also like Sylvie, like what the fuck? And he's like, I promise this will make sense at some point.
Yeah, because she wasn't there for all that. They were still looking for her. So, all right, Loki answers that phone call. The phone's still ringing, and it's Obi calling to ask what's taking so long. And he suggests that he could reboot the entire system to kick Miss Minutes out of it, and everyone immediately thinks that's a good idea, especially when the two Lokis saying do it when they find out that the magic dampeners
turn it off
will be turned off at the same time. They're like, hell yeah.
Even though they've drifted pretty far, the variants are still in sync enough that we can use our magic. Shit, turn that shit off.
That would be super helpful right now.
And I was wondering if that was going to be like a Faustian type bargain. It's like, I don't need to hear any of the drawbacks. Just turn our magic back on, and then it's eventually going to fuck them. But like, they were fucked way harder and stronger by the temporal forces. So it's like, I don't think that is going to make a difference one way or another.
Yeah, I don't know that the magic that these gods have stands up to the destruction of the TVA.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything they can trick their way out of there.
Yeah, because in Marvel, you've got several categories of power. You've got, like, you know, the Hulk and Thing and Colossus, and they're strong. They can lift 100 tons and do shit like that. Mm-hmm. You can hit them with bullets and ray guns, and they're invulnerable. And then you've got things like, you know, Thanos and well, then you got, like, gods, you know, the Asgardians and whatnot. And then you got, like, moving up the scale, you've got things like Thanos and then you've got like what they call like the personifications of the fundamental forces of the universe, like creation and death and time, the Infinity Stone type of shit. And it would be utterly unsurprising if like Loki's powers are nothing before the actual fires of creation of the universe, you know?
Yeah, that's my assumption.
Not even a god can escape the causality.
Yeah, I think whatever fate befalls Mobius and Obi and everybody is also going to befall the Lokis here.
It wouldn't surprise me if both of the variants get untethered in time. But you know what? Let's wait till the end of the episode to
Save
discuss
it all.
that.
All right, Miss Minutes realizes someone's rebooting the system, and as she goes offline, she tells Victor, "You'll never be him," which is surprising because I expected her to say, "I love you." It's what we all thought she was going to say, right?
Your pronouns are he, they, because you'll never be him. I liked that. I liked everything about this scene. I liked Miss Manners like losing her mind and doing the Hal from 2001 regression to like, I think she started off as maybe a chess timer, if I remember, and
possibly?
she kind of like reverts through previous versions of herself until I liked the Victor, who's never seen like a glitchy live stream or like Max Headroom. Like, he's from 1891. He doesn't understand, and he just thinks Miss Manners is making fun of his stutter.
It's Miss Minutes.
There's just mockeries on Miss Manners. Yeah, not Miss Manners. Miss Minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Miss Manners would be highly inappropriate for her to that's it's just
You'll
rude.
never be him. Yeah, that's rude.
Make fun of neurodivergent people. But so what do you think Miss Minutes is up to? Is this just score like a woman scorned, a clock scorned?
But yeah, I'm trying to decide if they're trying to tell us anything about the world here, or if they're just saying something about Miss Minutes. And I mean, Miss Minutes loved He Who Remains, and she clearly says that this guy is not him. And I don't.
But from a temporal aura perspective, do you think
works,
she's trying
right?
to
The
get into his
works,
head?
So.
Do you think she's trying to get into his head? Because one way to interpret that is,
I mean, she could be trying to drive him to become him, right? Like telling a man as driven as he is that he will never be that thing might drive him forward more.
But this particular, like, before it becomes He Who Remains, he is kind of a cowardly lion type, it seems like, you know? And a type of guy that wouldn't volunteer to walk out into temporal radiation and get spaghettified, right? Mm-hmm. I was wondering if, especially on the second watch, I was wondering if she was saying, because like I think she hates Victor at this point. She is fully scorned. She hell hath no fury, etc., etc. And she said the one thing to him that she thinks might circumvent his failsafe option. And again, I don't fully understand the failsafe. This is all I don't know. But like, it seems like if you got a cowardly lion type, and you're like, you're the Wicked Witch, and you really want to make sure the cowardly lion does something stupid, takes himself off the board, you might be like, I bet you're too big of a pussy to save Dorothy. Mm-hmm. Normally, he would never save Dorothy, but he's like trying to prove you wrong. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's something. I don't think it's fully baked, but there's something to that.
It's
or
possible.
Maybe like a. Yeah, or maybe him dying. Because the other theory I had the first time I watched it, when he got spaghettified, and the world ended, and I'm sitting there for like a minute or two thinking about what the fuck did I just watch. I like, did he have to like Dr. Manhattan get his ass atomized to get the insight into, he becomes one with the timeline, and he can like see things that he would never, because he's still not at the level he was when he taught Ouroboros the things he knew, right? Maybe this is a chrysalis stage that he has to go through to become he who has remained, and she is still trying to shove him. Well, I know he's too big of a pussy to volunteer to get in the suit, so I got to incept this into his head so that he will.
I can totally see that.
So that's a couple of different ways, but like I don't know. I feel like no matter which way I look through that time portal, I'm not quite getting a clear picture.
Well, this goes back to the hot cocoa machine for me. The weird feeling I get when I see him so obsessed with that is, I'm thinking, is this guy up to something? And he might be, just not this version of him, right? Like, and that kind of ties in with the Miss Minute stuff. If this is all part of his plan and she's goading him toward it, then yeah, that might make sense that I should be weirded out by that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll talk probably a lot more about that here in the final scene. But before that, Renslayer sends Brad to deal with the reboot. And out in the hall, he gets magicked by the two Lokis. And he goes back inside the conference room here and distracts Renslayer long enough for Loki and Sylvie to grab Victor and run with him. And then Brad prunes Renslayer, which I was like, oh my god. There's no way they pruned Renslayer. What kind of fakery bullshit is this? I'm ready to call complete bullshit. And then the end of the episode happens. I forget all about that. So, big moment that turns out to be nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. A matter of fact, too, because it's like, it's just they used their god powers to ensorcel this shithead, and he did it to him. But you're right, the whole place blows in like 5 minutes later, so.
Yeah, it seemed like a huge deal, but I guess not. Let's talk about...
That's the other thing, is somehow that like He Who Remains and Renslayer will get their souls intertwined, because they're both like temporally deatomized in close physical and temporal proximity to each other. And
she gonna have his hair at the end of this?
He has hers. Yeah, I like to do that swap. I just like to see what that swap looks like.
Is that a fair trade? I'm trying to think what Renslayer's hair is. It's much better than Victor's.
I mean, she's got much more of a kind of a classic restraint. He's going for, like I said, the untamed Frederick Douglass hairstyle. Both of them,
filtered through the Doc Brown lens.
Yeah, some of those have things to recommend themselves. Like they both, got good bad things you can say about them.
I feel like that's pretty good villain hair. What Victor's got going on. Be okay if he held that through the rest of the series.
Frederick Douglass had big villain hair, boy, I tell you.
Oh boy, gonna get in trouble.
Hey, wrong side of history on that one, Jim.
Let's move on to the final scene.
You know who didn't have villain hair?
No.
Thomas Jefferson. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin.
Not villain hair.
No hair villainy there.
Let's move to the final scene where they bring Victor to the loom room. They scan his aura, which unlocks the blast doors. Does not fry his head or anything. Victor volunteers to launch the multiplier. They don't have time to argue, so he goes out, and as soon as he steps out of that airlock, he's disintegrated by the temporal radiation. They watch as the loom is destroyed, and the explosion engulfs them all. We get like a long cut to black here, like 5 seconds. I'm like, are they coming back with more? It felt a little too early for the episode to be over, but then they hit us with the credits.
And I was still not right. I'm like, I got to wait until the end of the fancy credits because there's no next
post.
Episode button. No, there's no post credits. It's so weird after they hit us with the early one.
That's an effective cliffhanger, man. Like,
yeah. It's ballsy because the only reason I'm not like saying like I don't know is because like I'm just completely on board with what they're doing here. Like it would be shocking to me if they dropped the ball at this point. It's still possible, but that's like to me that's a big swing and they're calling their shot. They're like we are going to hit a home run with this big swing, but it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, they subverted every expectation I had. I have no idea what comes next, but I do want to speculate with you. I see a lot of paths forward.
They built real solid tracks over where I thought they were going to go, and just nope. Just completely yeeted that into the cosmic soup. And like on second watch through, it's like that's where I started thinking about missed minutes, because Victor's never been overly concerned with personal courage, right? He's always been like, look over there, I'm running here, and even when they back him in the corner and he's like, I should have a say, and he's like putting up his little dukes, and it's like, nah, come on. But like right before he goes out there, he says it's time to be brave. Like I am trying something new, and it fucks him instantly. And I feel like missed minutes kind of pushed him in that direction. Yeah, I guess we should. I still don't want to get into complete. We kind of talked about everything.
I mean, this is it, man. This is the time to do it.
I really like that final reaction shots, because they did like this. I felt this was indulgent, but I went along with it. Like, you get 2 reaction shots. The first is like, oh my god, that dude got spaghettified. And then when the loom explodes, they go back and I love Owen Wilson is like having every possible fight, flight, or freeze response simultaneously. Like he's like getting his, but he's also it's like but he's like there's literally nothing to do. It's. I guess if you want to make the highest percentage play, you duck behind something solid, but it's not going to save you. It's not going to save you. You're at ground zero on a nuke blast, man. You can
close the blast doors. You duck behind a console, and you hope for the best. You kiss your ass goodbye, right? Because
you get one of the lead aprons that dentist puts you in and try to hide under that, but it's not going to save you. But I just love that performance where he is just cycling between fighting, fleeing, and freezing.
Well, I'm having that same reaction as an audience member. I'm thinking the realization is dawning on me that there's nothing that can be done in time to fix this. And I don't even see the angle of a Deus Ex Machina here. I don't, of course you've never seen Deus Ex Machina, but I didn't even see it.
If something happens after fade to black to the revert, there's certainly things I'm prepared to accept. I think if Loki and Sylvie got unstuck from time,
this is what I assume,
and that they are reconstituted in different timelines, and now it's how do we get back to the TVA without a time pad, and they're working together and they're using magic and they got to go. I don't know. Any number of the Marvel bullshit ways you can time travel and all that. I'm willing to have 2 Asgardian gods get detached from time and tumbling through the. But they can't just right as the thing with Black turns out Odin showed up and he just grabbed both ends of the loom, Anthony Hopkins, and is like, yeah, you
that's
can't
Walking
do
Dead
that.
horse shit. No, the reason I'm not.
You told the story of them blowing the fuck up, and you have to blow them the fuck up and then figure out from there. You cannot say, oh, actually they didn't blow up.
Right. No, this is why I'm not super upset by this cliffhanger, because they did tell us what happened. Now, if they go back on that next episode, I'm going to be pissed off, and you will hear me rant and rave next episode about it.
And I will be your Flavor Flav, holding the giant clock saying, what fucking time is it, Disney? Yeah.
Right. It'll be shaped like Miss Minutes. It'll be talking.
Miss Minutes will be my girl.
So that's
wear, on a chain on my neck.
It's a huge possibility, right? They get unstuck from time again. They're warping through different timelines, maybe together, maybe separate, trying to reunite, trying to figure out what do we do without a TVA. I think there's a very real possibility that even if that does happen, we also see a lot of other characters go back to their original timelines. We see the Mobius on the jet ski. We see what Casey was up to before he got TVA'd, what Obi was doing, right? And I'm kind of way in on that. I would love to see Obi in his regular life dealing with regular people for once.
It would be hilarious if Obi's just literally the Kehi Kwan. He's literally filming everything everywhere all at once.
Oh my god, he's got Brad's life.
Wouldn't that be so fucking funny if he's actually if his real life was him and he's making a movie about interdimensional shit?
Oh my god, if they can get the Daniels in here to do some work on Loki, I would lose my mind. It would be the best thing. Season 3 featuring the Daniels.
be very fourth wall shattering, but in a way like this show could get away with it. I think that would be super funny. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be something like where it's and then I think there's a strong possibility that the next 2 episodes are like a zany romp through the first 4 episodes where they're trying to like one step ahead, you know. But I have a lot of high hopes because again, I kind of remember being hot and cold on Loki until they got to the penultimate episode and you had that Golden Age Loki and Alligator Loki and the the Democratic Loki and all that kind of stuff. That was just so much fun, so cool, so visually entertaining. Like I'm expecting that, especially after you just blown up the universe. That's big shoes to fill, but I think they can do it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they can do anything visually as interesting as like an Alioth or the End of Time or anything, because we've already seen that stuff. Where do they go from there?
That's also some of the highest fan servicey stuff too, because it was just like that was just a fucking dream board of Easter eggs and comic references and obscure giant sized Thors, and it's just self-referential and I can't wait. I wish I could hit play on the next episode right now.
How about this? You floated the idea that maybe they just blow up time in like a primordial kind of way. What if we get Morgan Freeman narrating a time lapse from the beginning of human history, or the beginning of geological history, all the way to where we are now in like 5 minutes?
That'd be kind of cool, like a Bruce Almighty, he's God kind of, he's some kind of... I wonder if the Watcher could do anything about this, because Marvel's introduced, this guy's name is like a otaku or something. It's not that, because that's not
the
that
otaku?
name,
the Watcher is an otaku? Oh, no.
Yeah,
no.
He's like really into anime and watching all personal dimensions happening simultaneously. But he's like, the whole What If Marvel series is him, like he's this Watcher from outside of time, and he just watches the multiverse, and I think he can't do anything about it. His whole thing is like he can just see it all. But I wonder if he could, like if he's like, is he like the ultimate failsafe of the universe? Like he's watching interdimensional cable TV, and if his cable's out, he calls the cable guy and they fix it.
Okay.
Because why else have a Watcher?
Mm-hmm. If you can't do anything, why watch?
Yeah, I wonder
entertainment,
if they'll do.
I guess.
And they just introduced him in the Marvel canon and the MCU canon anyway, with the Disney Plus stuff, because they did that animated What If series. What if Captain America was a girl? What if Doctor Strange caused a zombie plague to go through the Marvel universe? What if Uncle Ben never died? Like they did the whole series of like kind of animated things, but that's a way out of this.
Okay.
Maybe the Celestials, or like I said, the fundamental cosmic forces of the universe get together and be like, like death, time, energy, and all that got together. And it's like, what's this? This is some bullshit that just happened. We're gonna have to bibbity bobbity boo this back together. I don't know. Like I said, I have no fucking clue. Yeah. I have no fucking clue what's gonna happen.
The one thing that has to hold is that this actually happened. It can't be a trick by Sylvie or something like that. That would be complete horseshit.
Yeah. But it's also horseshit if the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a formless, shapeless void of creation. It's like, I don't know.
It wouldn't be fun to watch,
I want them to put the status quo back together, but in an entertaining way that I don't see coming. That's all I want to see.
It's not a big
and it's got to be good, too. It can't be horseshit, all right? As judged by me.
Yeah, not just interesting, but also entertaining while they do it. I have to laugh,
and I think they can pull it off. I gotta say, I think they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, so far so good on this show, at least.
Are you interested in hearing what other people think about stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Marvel@baldmove.com is how you get in touch with us for Loki. Got two more episodes. I guess before we get to feedback, I should also say, if you want to follow along with us on social media, it's the best way to see what we're doing. This winter is going to be very prestige heavy. We're going to be doing For All Mankind, Fargo, True Detective in the new year. If you want to keep up on the ins and outs of Bald Move, we're at Bald Move everywhere on social media except for TikTok. We're Baldest Move. Finally, if you'd like to get all this except for no ads and a ton of other bonus audio, video content, check us out, support.baldmove.com. to join the club. All right, let's get to karma. She's our first contestant at marvel@baldmove.com. She says, in case this isn't dry pie, I think when Casey announces there's a strange temporal pad reading that popped up right before Sylvie shows up in a World's Fair in 1893, it wasn't something special about Sylvie. Rather was the fact that that Ramona's using He Who Remains temp pad to hop around. Oh, wait, no. Sylvie is using He Who Remains temp pad to hop around, and TVA employees aren't supposed to know about the man behind the curtain. I guess this is the first time they're noticing it, but she presumably used it to get to 1982 Oklahoma. The plot hole could be waved away because the TVA and the timeline were in chaos at the time. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
His temp pad being that bracelet thing?
Yeah, that it's giving a weird signature and a time pad that they're not, because they know Renslayer, Jesus, I made it all episode. They know that Renslayer's temp pad is trackable, but Miss Minutes is fucking with them, and the timeline is fucking with them, and they're having a hard time tracking it. But this is a totally new one, and that makes sense. That how would they even know that there's a He Who Remains with the temp pad? And you got to know it's got extra features, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's not using no base model bullshit temporal pad. No.
He's running iOS 16 already.
He runs all the unauthorized video games. He's susceptible to all the viruses.
Where does... Okay, that brings up a good question. Where the hell does Mobius get unauthorized video games? Where is he downloading these things from? He's out of time, man. Is he going to pruned branches and pulling out video games that shouldn't be?
Did those temp pads run Android or something? They just took the cheap way out? It's not a custom OS. They just went off the shelf?
Yes. Yeah.
They're just Raspberry Pis running Google. Chromebook OS. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, shit, Miss Minutes used to be a chess clock. Now look at her.
Talk about the dark web. Holy shit.
I had that same question. Is the temporal pads have an app store? What the,
right.
What the fuck?
He's side-loading shit from another universe. Come on.
That, you cannot get much more side-loaded than from another multiverse, right? That's six-dimensional sides. Todd B says, it often saddens me when I remember you guys haven't watched Star Trek Voyager, because I think it's just became extremely pertinent to Season 2 of Loki. Loki is giving very strong Year of Hell vibes. If you utter that sentence on the podcast, a bunch of people listening are going to go, oh, yeah, maybe. It's a two-parter.
Is the Year of Hell the first season of Voyager where I watched it? Is that the Year of Hell? Because for me personally,
so it's the first two seasons. It's all everything until 7 and 9 shows up, and it's oh, Jesus Christ.
That was a Year of Hell.
Watching something good.
Bland-ass mashed potato face Tom Paris do shit. I don't care. It's the
Neelix that gets me. Why? You didn't learn from Wesley Crusher that you can't just you just can't create a by design annoying character and then not have the people watching it want to kill him. Why do you do this to people? Todd B says, oh yeah, so he wants us to watch Year of Hell. It's a really good story. One of the gems is in the Adventures of Janeway. It has some of the most beautiful graphic depictions of time I've ever seen. This episode, though, for graphic, beautiful depictions of time. I also had, I'll spare you the plot synopsis, but for the purpose of my analogy, Voyager's the temporal loom, and you know how those two episodes end. I'm betting Loki Season 2 will meet a similar fate. All right, I think you've said enough to stake out your internet points. I am unfortunately not going to watch Voyager anytime soon. Maybe at the end of time, and I finally get a chance to pop on my throne and just chill and watch. I'll get to it. But we're doing a lot with Star Trek right now. It's just if we're going to do a full series rewatch of anything, probably be the old series, since that's germane to Strange New Worlds, and my man Jim here hasn't seen any of it.
I'm really torn on Voyager. I want to watch it because I feel like I'm missing maybe a couple of nuggets, but I also really want to preserve the fact that I haven't watched it so I can continue to shit on it at every opportunity.
Yeah, just dump on it in ignorance. But I mean, it's always more fun to dump on things from a place of intimate detail.
Imagine if I could criticize individual episodes.
I just know that I had watched Star Trek my entire life. Starting from a young boy with my dad watching the old series fucked around in the animated series a bit when it was like, on when Nickelodeon brought it on, when their earlier offings. From day one on TNG, slogged through some years of hell there. Day one of Deep Space Nine. Day one of Voyager. And I didn't last through to the second season, man. It was just like, I wasn't ready to give a show 2 seasons to round itself into shape. So I found X-Files and moved on. Speaking of shows that were completely rewarding, didn't waste your time at all. That's the anti-Voyager. It just was like amazing and then went to shit after the movie, in my opinion. Anyway, Mary Kate from Austin, keeping it weird, says, last episode you were discussing how at the end of last season, the beginning of this season, we were briefly led to believe that Loki had arrived in an alternate version of the TVA until it was revealed he was in the past and jumping around in time. I was in agreement, but then I started to think, what about the giant king statue? Was that always there last season and we didn't notice? Was it taken down at some point and everyone's memory wiped? Or did Sylvie's decision to murder He Who Remains cause subtle changes like this? But it's still considered the same TVA? Did the history of the TVA change? If so, why doesn't Morbius seem to know about Kang? Trying to keep up with all the timey-wimey stuff. I'd appreciate you guys helping to sort it out each week. Do you want to take a stab at it? Because I think I got a pretty good answer. But I want to see.
I don't. It does feel like some kind of clue that we should be picking up on.
My understanding of Loki seasons 1 and 2 is that somewhere in the distant past of the TVA, at the dawn of the TVA, He Who Remains was out front, loud and proud about being its leader, with Rensselaer at his side as his general. And that's why when Loki went back in time and made all you see these cracks on the floor and then you see him go back in time and make the cracks and here's a conference room that has the He Who Remains figureheads and all that kind of stuff. That at some point, he wipes everybody's memory and restarts it with the Time Guardians or the Time Lords or whatever, the Doctor Who, whatever the fuck they call the 3 robots that were supposed to bring balance to the Time Force. And then that's where Loki kind of comes into the picture in that era of the TVA, where everyone's completely lost their minds and they've lost their memories and all that kind of stuff. And in that timeline, He Who Remains has taken care to completely distance himself from the TVA, so they don't, he's got a Wizard of Oz situation. And that's why when you go back in the past, things are very coded to be. And when we saw Loki, we didn't know that last season, but we saw Loki at the end of last season, his giant statue of He Who Remains, all that stuff. He had unstuck himself in time and gone back at the beginning of the TVA. And I also feel like to flesh that out, that there's a period in the TVA's history where they were an army. And I wonder if we'll actually find out that TVA stands for the Temporal Timely Victor's Army or something, the A stands for Army. But there was a time where the TVA fought willingly underneath him and Ravonna as their soldiers in an interdimensional war against the other He's who didn't remain. So yeah, there was a initial phase during the war. They won the war. He mind wiped everyone, including Ravonna. Then there was some indeterminate period of time where that just went for, who knows for how long. And then Loki entered the picture. Everything played out like it played out. And then he was sent back to the previous version of TVA. So that's what I think is happening.
Makes sense.
But I wouldn't swear on a stack of Bibles until we see more of this play out. We got a dissenter here. Jen wrote in and says, Loki episode 3 was very painful to watch. If it wasn't such a Hiddleston fan, I would have turned it off pretty early on. Not many laughs. Very obvious Victor Timely was a huckster and his voice was over the top. When this episode moved the story forward, I really hope the rest of the season restores the laughs and there are different Kang variants. Hey man, ma'am, in this case, I have definitely felt the lash of being the odd person out. I'm hating everything, something that everyone loves, or I'm loving something that everybody hates. And I feel like you're on the wrong side of the divide here, because I agree, obviously, about Victor Timely being a little over the top, being a little cringy, a little hard to get into that character's performance. But everything else, I thought last episode was plenty funny. Yeah, and this season is like or this episode I thought was just like a tour de force. So I'm curious to see if it like changed your mind, or if you just might be out on the silly Loki stuff, because it is fundamentally silly. As big as the stakes are, there's something about the other this versus the other Marvel stuff that just makes it just float along a little bit better than like the dour affairs that was Falcon and Winter Soldier and even late stage WandaVision. And it seems like Marvel's been dark and self-serious when it hasn't been just utter shit. So but I thought last episode it wasn't as funny as the first two, but it was still pretty funny. Miss Minutes being a giant ghost clock, I thought that was funny. Miss Minutes clumsy attempts to seduce Victor, and then him sending her through the time door and her coming out finishing "I love you." I thought that was funny.
I think last episode was the weakest of this season, but everything has been so good that's not really a problem for me. A season is always going to have its weakest episode, and I agree with what you're saying. Like, it wasn't as funny, certainly, because Obi's hilarious and he wasn't in it much. And then, it's a lot. I understand, like, especially Victor Timely, the performance there is way out of left field, and if you're not on board with a really silly character, then I could see how it would grate on you. I'm kind of giving the show a lot of latitude here, and I'm glad I am, because it does stuff like this, but I totally understand. I just didn't, it wasn't offensive to me. I still enjoyed it, maybe not as much as the other episodes, though.
Yeah, there's sometimes that we go years before we really kind of shit on shows, because the shows we cover where we generally like and we think are great quality, and when they disappoint us, it's a shocker. And I feel like sometimes that leaves us vulnerable to being like, oh, you guys are just carrying water, you guys are just a fan cast, blah blah blah. I don't think we have this problem this year. Like, we've really ripped some shit that was fairly well received and popular. So like, yeah, it's like, it is my honest opinion that this is a just really good season. I'm having a blast with it, like, especially in comparison with the rest of D+. I mean, Jim's liking this, and he fucking hates Marvel, and he hates Asgardian gods most of all. So, like...
Well, it helps that all their magic has been dampened, and none of that shit applies.
Well, more. You're going to have a lot of green shit flying around, Jim. Buckle in.
Got my eyes on you, Loki. I'm watching you.
That'll do it for this week. Hope you like this week's episode better, Jen. If not, there's only 2 more episodes left. Marvel@baldmove.com is how you get in touch with us. Real quick, @baldmove is how you follow us on all social medias, except for TikTok. We're @baldestmove there. And if you want to get tons of great bonus audio and video content, just carve pumpkins on lunch today. That was fun. Speaking of glorious purposes and disasters. And then, if you want to get in on that and ad-free feed, support.baldmove.com. We'll see you next week on the next episode of Loki. Until then, I'm A.Ron.
And I'm Jim.
Excelsior!